My name is Megan, and I'm 32 years old. When I saw the two pink lines on the pregnancy test, I sat on the bathroom floor for almost 10 minutes without moving. My husband and I had been trying to have a baby for more than a year. We had spent money on doctors, vitamins, treatments, and tests that always ended the same way. So that morning, I thought my husband would hug me, cry with me, and tell me that our life was finally beginning. I never imagined that moment would destroy my marriage in less than an hour. Issen came home from work tired and barely looked up when I showed him the test. I remember exactly how his expression changed. He didn't smile. He didn't hug me. He just stared at the white plastic stick as if it were something dangerous. "What is this?" he asked coldly. I thought he was in shock. Nervously, I laughed and told him he was going to be a father. Then he said something I still hear in my head some nights. "It's not my child." It felt as though my chest had been hollowed out from the inside. I thought he was joking, but he kept talking. "A doctor told me years ago that I probably couldn't have children, so don't lie to me." I tried to explain that probably didn't mean impossible. I reminded him that no doctor had ever said he was 100% infertile. But Issen had already made up his mind before he even listened to me. He started pacing around the living room like an angry man who had been waiting for months to confirm a betrayal. He accused me of cheating on him. He demanded to know who I had slept with. He said he finally understood why I sometimes smiled while looking at my phone. Those were messages from my sister, but it didn't matter anymore. When someone wants to believe something badly enough, they can turn any detail into evidence. I tried to reach for his hand, but he stepped back as if I disgusted him. Then the worst part happened. He said the exact words that would replay in my mind over and over again. "My wife got pregnant, and it's not my child." And then he threw me out. Because that's exactly what he did. He tossed an old suitcase onto the floor and told me to leave that very night. I was pregnant, confused, and shaking, but he didn't care. He kept saying he wasn't going to raise another man's child. I cried the entire time I packed. I remember looking at the lit windows of the house while waiting for a taxi and thinking that just an hour earlier, that place had still been my home. My life had changed so quickly that I couldn't even process it. My mother had died years before, and my father lived in another state with his new family. I didn't have many options, so I ended up staying in my friend Clara's small apartment. I slept on her couch for almost 2 weeks. Issen never called once to ask how I was doing. The only messages I received from him were cold texts about divorce. The humiliation was even. Worse, his family began treating me as though I had actually been unfaithful. His sister posted passive-aggressive comments on social media about lying women. Some friends stopped speaking to me. Even people who had known me for years looked at me with suspicion. But then something even stranger happened. 3 weeks after he threw me out, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. But I answered because I'd been waiting for news from a clinic. "May I speak with Megan Parker?" a man's voice asked. "Yes," I replied. "My name is Daniel Hoffman. I'm an attorney. I need to speak with you regarding the estate of Eleanor Wetmore." I didn't recognize the name. I explained that he must have the wrong person. But the man was silent for a few seconds before saying something. That made me slowly sit down on the couch. "I have not made a mistake. Your husband was previously married, correct?" A knot formed in my stomach. Issen never talked about his first wife. I only knew that she had died many years before I met him. Whenever I tried to ask questions, he would change the subject. "Yes," I answered slowly. "What does that have to do with me?" The attorney took a deep breath. "His first wife left very specific instructions before she died. And your name appears in documents that were activated this week." My heart started pounding. I don't understand. Then he said a sentence that left me completely frozen. "Your husband's first wife left her entire fortune to you, $77 million. But with one condition." I stared at the wall. unable to breathe, while holding the phone to my ear. I thought the attorney was confused, or that this was some kind of ridiculous scam. I could barely afford prenatal vitamins and was sleeping on my friend's couch, so hearing the words $77 million sounded absurd. I asked him to repeat everything. The attorney spoke calmly. He explained that Eleanor Wetmore, Issen's first wife, had died in 2014 after a long illness. She came from an extremely wealthy family. She had investments, properties, and stock holdings that had grown significantly in value over the years. According to Daniel Hoffman, the estate was now worth more than $77 million. But the most shocking part wasn't the money. It was the condition. Before she died, Eleanor had discovered that Issen had been unfaithful to her throughout most of their marriage. Not once, several times. And yet, in public, he had always acted like the perfect husband, the devastated widower who had lost the love of his life. After Eleanor's death, Issen received sympathy, financial support from the Whitmore family, and a spotless reputation. But Eleanor knew exactly who he really was. The attorney told me that she had left behind a sealed clause that was only to be opened if Issen ever remarried. And in that document, my name appeared. Mrs. Whitmore had written that if Issen ever abandoned another wife during a pregnancy or tried to publicly destroy her reputation with proof, every portion of the inheritance intended for him would be legally transferred to that woman. A chill ran through me. It was as if a woman who had died 10 years earlier had somehow seen my future. Daniel asked me to meet him at his office the following day. I barely slept that night. Part of me kept thinking the whole thing had to be fake. But the moment I arrived, I realized it was real. The office was filled with documents, folders, and old photographs. Daniel showed me the original will. I saw Eleanor's signature at the bottom of the pages. There was also a handwritten letter. I still remember some of the lines because they left me shaking. If you're reading this, it means Issen has done to another woman what he did to me. I know how he emotionally destroys people to protect his image. I don't want another woman to be left alone while he continues pretending to be the victim. I started crying in front of the attorney, not because of the money, but because someone, years earlier, had understood exactly what I was going through. Daniel showed me something else as well. Before she died, Eleanor had hired private investigators. There was evidence of Issen's affairs, hidden financial transfers, and messages with other women. Everything had been legally documented and preserved for the first time since I had been thrown out of my home. I felt like I wasn't losing my mind. Then something even more humiliating happened. The attorney hadn't just contacted me. He had also informed the Whitmore family. 2 days later, the news spread among the people closest to Issen. The wealthy family he had spent years trying to impress discovered that he had thrown his pregnant wife out of the house and accused her of cheating without a shred of evidence. Even worse, they learned that he had emotionally done the same thing to Eleanor years earlier. His carefully crafted image began to crumble. But he still didn't know the worst part. The real blow came a week later when I took an advanced prenatal paternity test. I wanted to silence everyone. Once and for all. The results confirmed that Issen was the biological father of the baby. I still remember the look on his face when he received a copy of the report. He showed up at Clara's apartment, desperate, pale, and barely able to speak. He wanted to come inside. He wanted to explain himself. He wanted to tell me he had made a mistake. But it was already too late, because by then I knew the truth about him. "Megan, please," he said. I was confused. I was scared. I stood in the doorway with one hand resting on my stomach. This was the man who had thrown me out into the rain while I was pregnant with his own child. He had allowed his family to publicly humiliate me. He had tried to destroy my reputation simply to protect his ego.